Hello everyone, welcome to Adobe Creative Cloud Live. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. It's my pleasure to stream here live today talking about the new exciting Lightroom CC. Now for those of you who are saying, wait, Lightroom CC, I already have that. Isn't that, I've had that for years now. You've had a product by that name for years, and that product still exists, but it's been renamed Lightroom Classic CC. And now there's a brand new, from the ground up, desktop app called Lightroom CC. Sounds confusing, I know, but trust me, it'll become clearer in hopefully the next few minutes. So as I said earlier, welcome everyone. I see Victoria, Gilberto, David, Claudio, Anime, Ron, Shanae, John, Ruben, and everyone else in the room. If I missed your name personally, hello. All right, so with that said, let's jump in and let's get started. I'm going to take you from the top and let you know what this is all about, and then we're going to go through the 10 things that beginners want to know how to do with the new Lightroom CC, and of course we'll answer some questions along the way. So as I pop over to my computer, one of the first things I want to do is I want to show you under the Creative Cloud app now, whether you're on Mac or Windows. I'm on Mac, so I'm seeing it here. There is the Classic CC. So this is the one that I was talking about earlier. If you've been using or have had Lightroom for years, that's what you'll still be using if you want to. So Lightroom Classic CC is still there, still the one I use, and it is formerly Lightroom CC, the desktop focused editing. The brand new Lightroom CC, not to be confused with its predecessor, is the cloud-based photo service. So they are different. They will, of course, share the same name, which means they share a lot of the same features and attributes. And best of all, in most cases, you can use either one or both as your needs, as it suits your needs. So I use both, and I'll explain that as I go as well. So now that we know that there is a difference, and Lightroom Classic CC did not go away, still does everything it always did, plus it just got a lot faster this week in this latest 2018 or new update. So with that said, now let's take a look at what the new one does. So I'm going to go ahead and open Lightroom CC, and it gets a different splash screen, and it just looks different. I see a grid of photos, very much like I would see in the previous version of Lightroom, but from that point on, there are a lot of differences and a lot of things that we'll talk about. But I'm going to approach this from the standpoint of people that are new. In other words, let's say you're watching this video at some point and you're saying, hey, I'm new to Lightroom. I want to know how to get started. Or I'm thinking about using the new Lightroom, maybe with or instead of the Lightroom Classic. How do I get started? So that's the approach I'm going to be taking for the next several minutes to get you through everything. I'll call out the 10 things as I do them. So if you want to recap what they were, you can just jot down your notes. And yeah, I got a photo with Rob. Rob was at Max. All right, so with that said, first things first, people always want to know, well, how do I get my photos in here? I launched the app. Yours would be empty unless you had some photos synced to Lightroom Mobile. Your Lightroom Mobile collections would be in Lightroom CC because this is the cloud-based service. So that is a good point to make. All your collections from Lightroom Mobile are already in Lightroom CC once they sync down. However, if you didn't have Lightroom Mobile before, you didn't use anything before, this would be empty. And if you wanted to import new photos, of course, that would be the plus sign in the upper left-hand corner. Now, you can do it from a folder, so you can either put the memory card in, copy the images to your folder wherever you want, and then do the import, or you could just put the card in and import them right from the card. Which one is better? They're about the same in this application because in either case, whether they're already in a folder or they're on the card, it's going to copy them to a new location anyway. We'll get into that in a minute. So at this point, it really probably doesn't matter a whole lot. So I'm going to take the card, I'm going to put it in my card reader over here. Okay, once that card pops in, then I'm just going to go to the plus sign in the upper left-hand corner, add photos, and that's where you would do it whether they're already on your drive or not. So when I click the plus sign, I can either browse for connected photos. It sees that my iPhone is plugged in. I can get photos off that, which you could do that before. Or I can bring them in from this card called Nikon D610. All right, so when I bring it in from the card, it starts to show me the card. And you might notice, even if you were a previous Lightroom user, just how fast things are. Like the thumbnails start to show right away. I don't have to wait. I can, of course, scroll down and they just start to pop in. Now, as you begin to make your selections, you could either say select all, which means bring every photo in off the card. Nothing wrong with that. That's the workflow I would normally use. But in this case, I don't want to wait for hundreds of photos to sync during the demo. So I'm just going to selectively pick a few that I want off that card. And I'm just randomly picking some here. Let's just grab some and scroll down a little bit. It's kind of the same scene shot to death. Sunrise here. There's slight differences as the sun is coming. Ooh, I want the one with the bird in it. Let's get that, and let's get that one. And then I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom where there's a lot of different photos from a different scene. I'm just going to pull a couple of those in as well. And maybe that one. Okay, so now that I've told it which ones I want just by checking them off or saying select all, it's going to add 8 photos, and these are all raw files. So you can either import your JPEGs, your RAWs, or your JPEGs or your RAWs. All right, next thing, and this is an important thing that people might miss. In the top center, you want to definitely choose where it's going to import them, meaning in Lightroom CC, is it just going to throw them into the all photos, or do I want to organize them right off the bat into what's called an album? If you're coming from Lightroom Classic, that would be the same thing as a collection. So in Lightroom CC, they're called albums. Lightroom Classic, they were collections, or they are collections. So I want to go ahead, I can pick an existing album to put them in. Like, for example, we were looking at the Adobe Max photos a few minutes ago. So I can stick them in there, or I can create a new album right off the bat. So I can say, nope, I want a new album. I want to call that album Adobe Live, or we'll call it Adobe Lightroom CC Live. There we go. All right, so I'll create that album, and now that's where they're going to go. So at least I'll know where to look for them right off the bat once they come in. Okay, so let's go ahead and click Add. That will add the 8 photos in. I can see it importing them pretty quickly over on the left-hand side, and it copied those photos from my drive, from my card. Now, at this point, I can be done with the card. I don't need the card anymore. It's still in the drive, but I can import more later, or I can work with these, which I'm going to work with these. Now, here's the big difference. Right off the bat, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little something happening there. There's a little animation. That little animation is that it is syncing those 8 photos. So right off the bat, anytime you import images in the Lightroom CC, by default, automatically, it will start to sync and back up those photos. Now, of course, how long it takes is going to vary by user. How fast is your internet connection? How big were the files? How many did you import? So forth and so on. So this could take a few seconds, it could take a few minutes, it could take a few hours, depending on your internet speed and your connection and how big your files are. These, I believe, are around the 24 megapixel size, and they are the actual Nikon RAW files. So a couple of them have synced already, and they will sync and continue to sync in the background. The beauty of it is, right now, those files are stored locally, and I don't have to wait for that to finish. I can start working, moving around, exporting, editing in Photoshop, anything I want to do, and that will just happen as long as it takes to happen. I don't have to worry about it. Unless I want to run over to another system and work on them, then that's when I have to wait. If I don't need to do that, they can come over at any point. As long as they take. Okay, so now if I go back to my album view, I can see, if I scroll down here, here's the new album that we just talked about. So there's the one that we just created, Adobe Lightroom CC Live. We just can't see the live because the column is not wide enough. But there's the collection, and it looks like we are also done syncing and backing up. So it always shows me a little check mark letting me know everything has been synced and everything's been backed up. That means those images are now available everywhere. We'll get into that in just a minute. So the first one was how to import your photos. Number 2, how to create these albums. So I've got a bunch of folders here. This is an album. What's the difference? An album actually contains your photos for organization purposes. The same photo can be in multiple albums without taking up any additional space. Just like the same song can be in multiple playlists on iTunes or your music player without taking up any additional space. Just like the same photo can be in multiple collections in Lightroom Classic without taking up additional space. So you can build as many albums for as many needs as you want. So if I wanted to make a new album, we'll create a new album called Sunrise, because that's what this is. Sunrises. I want to just have all my favorite sunrises. I can create that album and it has 0 photos in it. If I take these 6 or 8 or how many ever these are, drag them into sunrises, they haven't been duplicated, but now they are in both albums. I can have them in as many albums as I want. I can go on this one and say, well, you know what? Now that I realize it, these really weren't the sunrise. These were from a different location. Those might have been sunset. So I can hit delete and remove the photos. They won't be deleted. You can still find them in all photos. They'll just be removed from this album. So now this album has 6 photos. This album has 8 photos. Some of them are the same in both albums, and that's perfectly okay. I have lots of photos in lots of different albums for lots of different reasons. All right, so number 3, how do you create folders? And what are folders? Now, this might be a little confusing, especially, I got to translate, especially if you're coming from Lightroom Classic or the prior versions of Lightroom. In Lightroom before Lightroom CC, this version, folders were always the physical locations of where your photos are on your drive. And that's still the case in Lightroom Classic CC. However, since your images are just always in the cloud on Lightroom CC, folders really don't matter anymore. So this is not really a folder system like it used to be in Classic, or it still is in Classic. So therefore, folders now are organizing your albums. So albums are where the pictures are. Folders are collections of albums. The images are in the cloud. So with that said, if I were to go in now and say, create a new folder, then I can call this new folder Adobe Live, for example, and that new folder has nothing in it. I can take these 2 collections and I can drag those these 2 albums. It'll take me a minute to get used to saying it the right way in the right program. But anyway, I can take these 2 albums and drag them into the new folder. So you can organize as many folders and as many albums as you want to contain your pictures for organization purposes. All right, next up, how do you do a search? Now, let me point this out. For years and years and years, we've always told you, and most don't tell you, most don't do it. They always tell you, and most don't do it, you should keyword your photos. That way you'll always be able to find them. And sure enough, Nate, let me get into that in a minute. One of the things we're going to talk about is storage and where things are. So stay tuned for that answer. But anyway, keywording, beach, sunset, ocean, sky, tree, rocks, so forth and so on. So, we've always been taught to do that. And that's great for 2016. This is 2017. No need to really keyword anymore. There's a keyword feature. You can still, of course, put in your own custom keywords as you always did. But for the people that say, God, I always hated that, I never really did it consistently, I just want to find my photos without having to think about it, that's where Adobe Sensei comes in. So Adobe Sensei has already looked at these photos. It's already compared them to other photos that are similar to them in the ecosystem in Adobe Stock and everywhere else it can look. So I don't really ever have to keyword. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. So to prove that point, I'm going to go to my All Photos area. And in my All Photos area, I'll scroll to the top real quick, I'm going to do a search for tree. When I hit return, it's starting to find pictures of trees on images I have never keyworded. So for example, all these tree images, I've never, ever, ever once keyworded. And maybe some of them I did, but most of them I absolutely did not. So it's found trees just because it knows what a tree looks like. So for example, I know for a fact I did not keyword anything called boat, but yet it's finding pictures of boats throughout my 19,670 photos. So you don't have to keyword. You can if you want to. I probably won't anymore because there's just simply no reason to. And it's even smart enough to, like, for example, you can't even see the boat here in this life preserver photo, but it assumes that's attached to a boat, and it's right. That is a boat, and I have bigger pictures of that boat somewhere if I scroll down. So how do you search? Just go up to the top and do your search. Now, let me get rid of the search term, and let me go to the filtering, because a lot of times you will want to filter on certain things. So you can filter on keywords if you've used them. You can also filter on the kinds of cameras you've used and to take the shots that are in here. So I've used a variety of different cameras through the years. You can search on locations. I don't know what I just searched on, but let's, Fuji camera. Let's go reset. Let's get rid of that. There we go. And you can also search on locations. So places that you've taken your photos. And these locations are either keyworded that you put in the location fill, or it automatically detected the location based on the geodata in the photo. You can also filter, of course, on images that you've star rated, that you've flagged, and that are images or videos. So filtering and searching right there at the top of Lightroom CC. And the best part, like I said, is that you don't have to add your keywords unless you want to. All right, next up, and this is a big one, how do I edit in Lightroom? So let's go back to our photos here that we're working on. Again, these are right out of the camera. No real editing's been done to them. So I might want to do some edits here and just play around with what I have in Lightroom CC. So if I click on a photo, I can see my editing controls all over here on the right-hand side. So some I recognize right off the bat. Oh, I know that anywhere. That's the crop tool, crop and rotation. And nothing bothers me more in a landscape photo than a crooked horizon. So I can go ahead and just simply straighten that photo out using the crop tool. I could use the auto straighten. I could rotate it, flip it, and do all the things you would expect the crop to do. Now keep in mind that when you apply any edit in Lightroom CC, especially if you're new to this, it is also non-destructive, just like it has been for over 10 years in Lightroom Classic. So any of these edits that I'm doing, including the crop, can always be undone or redone or done differently. So there is never a reason to think I don't have to save, because those corrections are being made non-destructively and just applied to the metadata. Okay, but let's get to the editing part. So if I get to the editing, a lot of these sliders, many of you will know by name, you'll know by heart, you've used them before. A lot of them just are self-explanatory, like exposure. I could just sit here and play with exposure. There's the auto button, and auto for many years has always been a bad word, and auto has gotten a lot better over the years. So a lot of times I'll start with auto and then adjust to my taste after that. So for example, auto did bring down the highlights in the areas and things over here the way I want it, but it did not bring down, or it did not give me enough in the shadow area. So I'm going to pump up the shadows a little bit more. I also, of course, usually add a little bit of vibrance to my photos. A little, not too much. And I haven't met a photo yet, especially taken outside, that couldn't use a little dehaze, just a tad bit, not a ton. And of course, we've got sharpening, noise reduction, camera lens calibration, that helped a lot actually, and geometry, upright, and so forth and so on. You also have presets. So if you wanted to use any of the built-in presets for correcting a photo, and you can hover over them to see what they will do, or you have pretty much created your own look, you can go ahead and apply, what do I want to do here? I want to create a preset. So I can create a preset and I can call it sunrise, whatever. Call it whatever you want, and that will create a new category called user presets. So that means if I were to jump to a different photo, let's jump to a different one here, and I were to go to my user presets and click on sunrise, Boom, I've just adjusted that photo the same way I did the other sunrise. I can select 100 photos and adjust them the same way. So you have the ability to continuously adjust your photos any way you want, non-destructive. You never have to worry about if it's going to hurt the photo or do some damage to the photo down the road. So editing from a Lightroom perspective is the same as it pretty much always has been from a Lightroom and Camera Raw perspective. You will always have the best of breed tools here to do your edits with. You still have selective adjustments as well. So if you want to, for example, use the gradient tool to adjust how that sky is going to look and pop, I can do that just by dragging the gradient filter there. Maybe cool off the temperature of that a little bit, add a little bit of clarity to it, and again, a little bit more dehaze from the top. Too much. And there it is. There's my newly corrected photo. Now, of course, the edits themselves are always happening and syncing back and forth without having to sync the whole photo again. So it's making that adjustment, it's syncing the adjustments up to the cloud, but it's not having to sync the entire photo. So those will usually go a lot quicker than having to sync the original photos. So you can sit there and make edits all day, and the best part is you can make your edits anywhere. So now, there was a question I saw earlier. I think it was John that was asking this question. Is there a way, or how do you manage your storage? I can't remember what the exact question was, but I knew I'd get to it. And John Blackwell was also asking a different question. Do import presets from Lightroom Classic work in Lightroom CC? And the answer is not at this time. There's no way to do that import at this time. So if you want the same look and feel, you'd have to unfortunately make them, or bring that photo in that's been adjusted and then save that as a preset. So that would be that's the old workaround we used for Lightroom Mobile. All right, without saving it as a preset, but at least copy and paste. Okay, so let me go here and let's go to, oh, actually before we do that, let's get into that was number 5, how to edit in Lightroom CC. Number 6, how to manage your storage. Let's get to that. So I'm gonna go to my Adobe Lightroom CC menu. I'm gonna come down to Preferences. And in Preferences, I'm gonna go to Local Storage. And in Local Storage, this is where you get to decide how much space is being used on your local hard drive. You also get to decide when originals are kept on your local hard drive, where they're kept. Right now, it will pick a default folder, I believe in your Pictures folder on your main drive, your boot drive. But of course, most people, or a lot of people, don't have a ton of room on their boot drives these days. So they use external storage, and you can change this location to that external storage area. But this becomes a more interesting slider here. Of course, that's important, putting the photos where you want them to be, but deciding how many of those photos or what percentage of those photos are stored locally is probably a better thing to talk about right now. Since everything is synced and backed up to the cloud automatically, then at what point do you not need it on your drive anymore? And that's what you're deciding here. I'm saying, I've got plenty of room on this drive, so 25% of my photos that I work on can stay on this drive. Anything older, meaning once I start running out of space, it will remove from my local drive and just keep it in the cloud. If I go to work on that photo and need to export the full resolution of that photo, then it will download it. It will resync it back to my local drive, and if it needs to, clear off something else that's older. If you feel that you want to always have your images on your drive and never ever only have them in the cloud, then you can store a copy of all originals locally. So you have that option if you want it. I would say the average person using Lightroom CC probably won't ever want to do that, but for people that are paranoid and say, no, I always want them with me at all times, you have the option to do that. It is totally up to you. Now, for example, on my MacBook Pro, where I don't have a ton of space as I do on this desktop machine, I've got this set down to 10% because I really don't need to keep that many local images on that computer, on that drive. Actually, I could probably bump this one up to more like 50% because I've got a ton of space on this drive. So I can keep more local files there. Now, what's the difference? Why would you want them local versus not local? The only reason you would want to keep more local is you want to quickly be able to export full resolution images or quickly be able to edit full resolution images in Photoshop. In terms of Lightroom, it doesn't need to be local because it's making the adjustments built on the previews that are stored and syncing them to the actual files, whether they're local or not. So yes, it's cool having local files for full resolution of your originals when you need it. But in most cases, think about it, as images get older, as you finish working with images and shoots and you share them, you've done everything with them, you probably won't be going back to them using full resolution on a regular basis. So that's why this slider is important. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, next up is, that was number 6, how to manage your storage. Now we're going to talk about how to edit your images on mobile and web. So I've got my iPhone here. I'm going to pop it open just for a second. There's my iPhone, and on my iPhone, I'm going to switch over to Lightroom CC. You can see it down there at the bottom. So this is a iOS and Android app available for iPhone and iPad. It's a universal app, and Android tablet and phone as well. So you can use it on either platform and have the same capabilities. All right, so when I tap on Lightroom CC, it'll take us, I can see the little cloud icon up there. It's doing its update. It already just popped in the Adobe Live folder. So my Adobe Live folder is already there. And now the 8 images are starting to show up as well. If I go to sunrises, for example, I can see the edit to the raw file. It's showing me, by the way, that it's a raw file. And I can go in and continue working on that just as if I were at home or still at my computer. So for example, maybe I want to share this on social media and I want it to fill the frame like on Instagram, but I want to share it as a square. So therefore, I'm going to do a crop. I'm going to change my aspect ratio to 1:1 square. I'm going to move the image around so I still keep the bird where I want it. I'm going to go ahead and tap, yes, that's what I want. And as soon as I get out of editing, it won't sync anything until I'm done editing. As soon as I get out of editing, I can see the cloud icon making its changes and syncing those changes back up to the cloud. So in a few seconds, as long as it takes to sync that change, it should appear on the desktop as well. Now, Lightroom Mobile has been around for a long time, but now you're getting a new updated app today. And one of the things that always bugged me about the previous versions of Lightroom, by the way, the update just happened on the desktop if you see it right here. The other thing that bugged me about the phone version or iOS versions in the past was there wasn't really a way to delete a photo, meaning you could remove it, which means it would remove it from a collection or album in this case, but it would still be in your all photos. Now I just want to point out that when you select a photo, since I already have this one multiple times, I don't really need it again, I could go in and I can actually say delete. There is still remove from album, but now there's a brand new choice and it warned you, hey, when you do this, you are really deleting the photo from the cloud, from the backup, from everywhere. It will be gone. But actually there are times where I really want to do that. There's a photo that's out of focus. I don't need it. I'm never going to use it. I shouldn't have to wait to get back to my desktop to delete it. So I do have the ability that photo is now gone and it will eventually disappear from all the collections that it's in as well. On the desktop and everywhere else. Okay, so that's the phone. You still have the ability, of course, these are free apps to download. You sign in with your Adobe ID. You also have the ability to go in and when you're doing an edit and do selective edits. So for example, if I go to selective edit down here and I hit the plus sign and I hit the brush, I can go ahead and start painting where I want this edit to be. So I'm masking this area down here. And then once I've masked that area, I can then choose what I want to do in that area. So I want to lighten that area up a little bit. I can use the exposure and lighten up the sand just a little bit down in that area. So that is one of the selective edits. That, of course, is in the desktop version, the web version, mobile version. All right, so now when I tap OK, once I get out of this photo, now it's syncing those changes back up, and those changes will appear where that photo is, which is right here behind the phone. So I'm going to put the phone down for now. We'll wait a second for the sand to lighten up, or actually we won't wait for it. We'll pop over to the web. Now, this has been around for a while as well, and a lot of people just didn't realize it was there. So let's see, Nate's got a question, so maybe I'll answer that while I'm waiting. This may be a dumb question, but what does raw mean? In It's in the corner of the photo. RAW means that it's the format that the image was captured in. As you know, you can capture JPEGs with just about any camera or every camera, but you can also capture RAW if the camera supports it. So it's a file format. Every camera supports usually a proprietary RAW format. So Nikon's NEF, Canon CR2, so forth and so on. But Lightroom Camera and Lightroom CC supports RAW as well, and supports DNG, which is digital negative, another version of a RAW format. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and pop over to the web. I'll bring up my web browser. And now I've got my web browser. I went to here, let me show it to you again. I'll go to lightroom.adobe.com. When I go to lightroom.adobe.com, that will bring up, I'm signed in with my Adobe ID, that'll bring up Lightroom CC, just like it was on my desktop, just like it was on my phone, with the same photos in it. There's my lighter sand. There's my photo with all the edits that was done to it, including the crop. So I can literally work on my computer. I can work on my phone, my iPad, my Android, my tablet, or any computer that has a web browser. Access all my photos at full resolution and make any edits that I want. Can I upload Adobe stock from Lightroom CC from computer, tablet, and phone? Not at this time. You could, theoretically, if you were on the phone, you could export it out, save it to the camera roll, and then use Photoshop Fix or Mix to upload it, because both of those mobile apps can. On the desktop, you would either use the browser, or Lightroom Classic, or the Bridge, or that would be it. All right, so now I'm here in the browser version of Lightroom, and I want to go in and hit Edit in the upper left corner. When I edit this photo, I can make other adjustments to it. So I can revert it back to its original, because it remembers what the original looks like. I can go in and let's say that I want to, let's see here, I want to do something visual. Let's add a vignette to it. I'm going to add a visible, darkened vignette to it. And just for the sake of having something that we can see. And I'll go ahead and save that edit. Nice dark, over the top, too much vignette. But we'll see that edit and we'll go ahead and let it update. It's doing its update now. And once that edit's been done, again, that edit will appear everywhere. So that's the beauty of it. You can, with Lightroom CC, it is a complete cloud photo system. So your images are backed up and synced. Your edits are, let me get out of this one. Your edits are applied non-destructively, as they always have been with Lightroom. And you have the ability to use Lightroom anywhere you want, on any computer, mobile device, or web. All right, so that was number 7, how to edit on mobile and web. Now let's go back to Lightroom CC. I'm gonna hide this one for a minute. Let's go back to the desktop here. And on the desktop, hopefully that'll update soon. What's going on there? All right, so that should update, but on the desktop, we're not gonna wait for that. We're gonna go ahead and go into my folder here, which has some stuff that I wanna do. And I want to go to this folder and I want to do an edit that I can't do in Lightroom. So that means going over to Photoshop. I want to do things that, Lightroom is great for the edits that it can do, but certain things Lightroom just can't do, and Photoshop can. So for example, if I want to take this photo and edit in Photoshop, I would go up to my File menu, Edit in Photoshop, and depending on the resolution of the file, it will either open up the Smart Preview, if that's all I have available to it. I think that's all this one is. That's all that was synced from original Lightroom Classic. Or it'll open up the full resolution. And if it doesn't have the full resolution but knows it exists, it'll take a few more moments to download the full resolution. Thomas, you are absolutely right, and I did a blog post about that at terrywhite.com today. So you can go read my thoughts on which one's for which. I actually called it Lightroom CC versus Lightroom Classic CC, which one's for you? And I answer those questions on that blog post. All right, but anyway, I'm here in Photoshop now. I've just said edit. It popped open Photoshop CC 2018 in my case, And now I can go ahead and grab my text tool, which I don't have a text tool in Lightroom. That's why we're here. I can go ahead and click, and I can, hold on, let's go ahead and make this type just a little bit bigger than 8 point. There we go. Maybe not, hold on. We need just some bigger type there. Let's choose a different font. For whatever reason, I am not seeing my text. That's weird. All right. We go to that one more time. Yeah, it's like my cursor. All right, let me do it this way. Let's go in. Before I put the type down, let's choose a bigger size. All right, I broke my text. Hold on. It's so tiny. There we go. Don't know why, but it was stuck on something very small. All right, so let's go to let's type Paris in, and let's give it a different color. Let's give it some of this gold here. Not that gold, maybe that gold. Of course, we'll make that bigger. One more time. Sorry about that. That was my heavy hand. Sorry. Honestly, I have used this program before. All right, let's try it again. All right, one more time. I clicked out of it before I was ready. Okay, and we want to use, not that, we want to use this. There we go. That's the color I want. And now that I've got that, we'll go ahead and commit to it. Put that where we want it. We can even add layer effects to it. Let's do a simple drop shadow on it. And we'll move that drop shadow around, maybe go that way with it. And of course, we'll make it a little bit bigger. Not crazy big. Not crazy distance. I'm being way too picky about this drop shadow, but anyway, there it is. All right, so now we've got that in place. And one more thing while we're at it, go to the type tool one more time. And let's choose. Yeah, I want it in all caps. Okay, so now we got that in place. Again, a change, took way too long for that change, but a change that was made in Photoshop that I could not have done in Lightroom at all. And of course, I have the full version of Photoshop to do anything else I want to do. Cloning, selecting mask, removing objects, adding more layers, compositing, doing anything I want to do. Once I'm done, we'll just simply hit save. We'll close it. We'll head back to Lightroom CC, and Lightroom CC has already returned the results at full resolution and stacked it on top of the original. So the original is still there, unchanged. If I were to go look at the original, there it is right there just by clicking the stack icon. So you have the ability to edit in Photoshop for the things that Lightroom CC can't do, just like you were doing the same thing in Lightroom, which is now Lightroom Classic CC, if you want to edit in Photoshop to do things that it could not do. Now, of course, I can still take that photo that we just worked on, and I can just add that to the other collection so it's there. Actually, it added both of them, but that's okay. So now we've got that photo, and here comes by the way, the edit did show up and come through, everything I've done to it. And if I decide, oh my God, what was I thinking? Go back, I hate that vignette, take the vignette off. This is the one that I added on the web, I believe, and I'm out of it. So again, none of that is destructive. I can keep working at any point and keep making adjustments no matter where I am to the photos that I want to edit. Okay, so that was number 8, how to edit in Photoshop. Number 9, and this is a big one. This is kind of cool and is one of the reasons I've always liked Lightroom for mobile. Now that it's Lightroom CC and it's all one ecosystem, I also have the ability to share a collections, or I'm sorry, an album. So if I go back to this album and I want everyone that I send this link to be able to look at all the photos in it, even if I add more or change them or edit them, then I can go in and right click on an album and say share album. When I say share album, that will generate a URL for that album that I can give to anyone that I want to be able to look at those photos. Once that URL is there, I can copy it and I can head back to the browser to show you what they would get when I send it to them. So I'll hit paste, and this is what they would see. So they would see, because it did put both photos in it, I have to go remove the one if I didn't want it. But they've got all the photos, they've got all the edits, they will see it every time they refresh this page, they will see anything that's been done to it. Now, if you want to take it up a notch, you also have the ability on your, here, let me refresh this, on your Lightroom web, you can actually do more. And it tells me that that particular album has been shared. So I have the ability to go into that shared album, it shows me the link for it, and I could even go in and I want to go to the settings for it. There we go. And for the sharing settings, I could allow downloads or not. So that would allow people to download JPEGs of those photos. I could allow show the metadata. So when they click on a photo, show the camera, show things that were done with that photo or where that photo came from. And I can also show the location or not. I could also designate, you know what, I only want people to see the photos that I've marked as pics, even though I have more than that in the collection or the album. And of course, at any given time when I'm done, I can stop sharing so that people no longer get to see those photos. I can even have a slideshow for those photos and what the settings will be if they run a slideshow on them. And I can, of course, post the link to that album on social media. So that's what can be done. That's one of the things that can be done with an album that has been shared. Now, you have the ability, let's see if I can see it real quick here. I want to do that. There we go. You have the ability, notice we have the album icon here. This is the one we've been using to get to our albums and folders. You also have this web icon too. And when you want, you can also create a web gallery. Now, web gallery is more of like a web page for your photos. It allows you to have a hero image and tell stories and add text and so forth and so on. So that's a web-only feature of Lightroom CC, but it can be done. It also allows you to rearrange the photos in the order you want them in. I didn't do a good job of dropping that one in there, but there it is. And also, of course, you have the ability to, let's see if I do this right. There we go. Set as the cover image, which one, I just held down on it to set which one I want as a cover image. Move, delete. I want to delete this one. Yes, permanently delete that photo. Go ahead. It's okay. I've got it. And of course, I can go in and continue to do more. Now, if I were to move an image around, let me see this real quick. I just want to see this. This cover. So I want to set this one as the cover. There we go. Perfect. And I want to, all right, that's cool. That's enough for now, actually. And that's all the same. Okay, I was just checking for, yeah, just to make sure that happened. Okay, so Lightroom Web, Lightroom Desktop, Lightroom Mobile, and sharing an album. That was number 9. Last but not least, let's pop back over to the desktop. And on the desktop, I'm going to close that. And what I want to do now is I want to talk about sharing individual photos or exporting. One of the things that's great is that you can do all of this work on big raw files or small JPEGs or anything in between, but there will come a time when you need to get a photo out of Lightroom CC to share on social media, to send via email, to give to someone, to post as a profile pic, to do something with. So with that said, you have the ability to go in and click on any given photo, go up to your file menu and choose Save To. That is a friendlier term than export. So people notice that, Lightroom Classic would have export and import and things that as professionals we've known for years. But for new people, those terms may not mean much. So Save To, that means something. Add photos, that means something. So we know we want to add more photos to it. We want to save photos out. So that's why the terminology is different in many cases. All right, so if I say Save To, I get the ability to change the format, original plus settings, which means whatever original file format that one is, I believe that's a TIFF, but go ahead and apply everything that's been done to it, or just save a JPEG, which is universally compatible with just about everywhere. Full size or custom size. So if I want like for example, for Instagram, they need to be no wider or no longer than 1080 pixels, so 1080 pixels. So I can say, you know what, don't make it any wider than that because anything wider than that is a waste. Or I can just say small. So if I don't want to figure it out, small would do it. Now I can also pick the location that it's going to save them to, or it will just save them to the pictures folder, which is the default location, Lightroom CC Save Photos. So once I do that, it doesn't take you there or anything at this point. You would just have to go find it on your own. So I would go here, pictures folder, and sort by date so I can find it. There it is. And there's the one I just exported. So there's the JPEG right out of Lightroom, ready to post, no bigger than 1080. So that would go right on Instagram with no problem. You will also have one more thing. You have the ability to go in and this wasn't one of the 10 things, but you have the ability to go in and select the photo first. That would help. You have the ability to go in and send directly to Facebook. So this is going to prompt you for a one-time thing of authorize your account, go link it on Facebook. Once you do that, the next thing it will prompt you for is a description, and it's just going to add it to your default timeline photos. So that's it. Those are the 10 things, and I did it in under 50 minutes. Those are the 10 things that beginners typically want to know how to do. Now, I saw lots of questions that didn't come through, or I'm sorry, that came through that I didn't get a chance to answer. So let's go ahead and answer some of those questions right off the bat. And then for those of you who have to go, I understand. But for those of you who wanted to see this, you saw it. Let's answer some of those questions. Good one. So Susan's asking, okay, I just downloaded Lightroom CC. Does this replace Lightroom Classic CC? No, it doesn't. So I answered this in a blog post I did today. I answered some of the FAQs, people asking questions like that. When you install Lightroom CC or Lightroom Classic CC, they're independent of each other. Meaning from the standpoint of what's on your hard drive, they're two applications you can launch independently. You can have them both open at the same time. It does not matter. Like if you install one first, one second, you never install the other one. They don't conflict with each other. All right, so that one's right off the bat. Let's see. Consumer-friendly terminology. Yep, that's what you'll find a lot of in Lightroom CC. How can I get a pic into a CC library for use in all CC apps? Okay, so Nate's asking a very specific question. It really doesn't have a lot to do with Lightroom CC, but hey, I can go ahead and tell you how to do that. Let's say we want to take this photo and let's develop it further. You probably want to see this too. Let's develop it further. So I'm going to go over and do some editing on it. First of all, we're going to fix the thing that always bugs me, a crooked horizon line. Let's just go ahead and straighten it. There we go. And now that we got that in place, the next thing we'll do is we'll just do a couple quick edits to it. Actually, we'll start with auto. There we go. And then we'll dehaze it a bit. And we'll add a little bit of vibrance to it, kick that up a bit, and we'll pull up the shadows a bit. Kind of hard to see some of those rocks over there. Okay, so now I've got my photo ready. I'm going to go ahead and pop it over to Photoshop. And the question I was asked is, how do I get my photo into a CC library? So CC libraries really haven't been a part of Lightroom at this point, so they still aren't. But they are a part of just about every other Creative Cloud app. So for example, if I go here to my libraries and I pick a library like Adobe Live, the one I use for demoing, then I have the ability to say, you know what, I want this photo that came from Lightroom to be in a library so it's accessible in all my other apps. All I'd have to do is then just hit the add content. I can add the foreground color or just the graphic. I just want the graphic. Once I click add, that will copy this over to that CC library, and I can rename it if I want to. And now it's in the CC library for all my other applications to use. So the way you add content to a CC library is from any CC library, and you have to have the content open. Once you add it in, then you close the content. They're independent of each other, and then you have it in that library to be used in all your other apps. All right, next up. Let's see if I see anything else. All right, and Gabby was asking about another question about tutorials on resources like Creative Cloud and libraries, etc. I've got several of those on my YouTube channel at terrywhite.tv. It's a quick way to get to it, and you can find all kinds of Creative Cloud tutorials there. There are some here as well on the Creative Cloud YouTube channel. Yeah. No, the font wasn't too big. It was too tiny. It was like 6 points. So I had to stretch it out, which I did. All right. I think I got everything. If I missed an urgent question, feel free to retype it in. There's lots of commentary going on, and I don't want to miss a question. I'll give you guys another couple seconds, and then we'll call it a day. We'll call it a stream. Let me scroll all the way down. Looks like I might have missed something here that's new. Here we go. You're welcome, Nate. It's what I do. What about private sharing? Well, it's private in a sense that it's only the people that have the URL. So there is no password sharing, if that's what you're asking for. But the URL is not public to the world. It's only public to who you share it to and who they share it to. Questions is there a way or is there plans to add album integration into Muse? I've been asking for that for a while, but I will show you something that's encouraging that we might get there someday because this is a new feature in Photoshop. So let's close this image for a second. And let's say I want to get to one of my Lightroom photos. Well, we know we can go back to Lightroom and say edit in Photoshop. But now in Photoshop CC 2018, you also have the ability to access your Lightroom photos. So if I click on the little magnifying tool there for search, now Lightroom Photos is a new category in the search inside of Photoshop. And if I go here and I scroll down, what do we call that one? We called it Adobe CC, there it is, Lightroom CC, there it is, live. Here are all those photos coming in from that album. So I can get to them from Photoshop now directly. Maybe one day, we wait patiently enough, we'll also be able to get to them from Muse. And I saw Dreamweaver earlier. And so this is a raw file, so it's bringing it up in Camera Raw first, which is awesome. And I can go ahead and do my Camera Raw things to it if I want to, or just go ahead and open it and then do things in Photoshop. My choice. All right, so that answers that question. Nope, not that one, Evil Cerise. It's just terrywhite.tv. So here, I'll put it in. All right, that's the link you guys were asking about. Okay. All right. The color space currently in Lightroom CC is Adobe RGB, I believe. So there's not Pro Photo RGB or any other RGB that I'm aware of. It's currently one space right now. All right. All right. Yeah, I couldn't see the whole URL, so I wasn't sure. But that's it. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me for this. I had a pleasure walking you through the Lightroom CC. I've got tons of tutorials on Lightroom Classic CC, or what was formerly Lightroom CC. So if you're looking to learn that, I've got the same sort of video for 10 things beginners want to know how to do in Lightroom CC, which is now Lightroom Classic CC. You can go to my YouTube channel and find that video, and then learn the 10 things for the other app. So there we have it. All right, with that said, thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Yes, a German stream starts tomorrow that will be in German. I will not be conducting that stream because I don't speak German. But if you do, you'll enjoy it. It's, I believe, on XD or interface or user interface design. All right, so with that, take care. Thanks for watching, everybody. Catch you on the next one. Bye.